The morning air at Arlington National Cemetery was sharp and pure, the kind that bit softly at your lungs and made each breath feel sacred. A fine mist hung low across the rolling hills of white headstones, endless, orderly, and still. Every stone seemed to whisper a name that no longer needed to be spoken. At the center of it all, beneath the solemn marble arch, stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, and in front of it, Sergeant Daniel Carter. To the world, he was simply the Sentinel. To himself, he was a promise kept. Danny was 28. His hair, dark chestnut, was cut to regulation. His eyes, gray-blue and unwavering, fixed on a point only he could see. His uniform was immaculate, deep blue jacket pressed razor-sharp, brass buttons gleaming in the early light, white gloves gripping the polished M14 rifle that rested across his shoulder. Each motion, the pivot, the pause, the 21 deliberate steps, echoed like a heartbeat in the marble plaza. Click, click. He turned, paused, and began again. He had done this for months. Through the burning heat of summer and the cold bite of winter. Through rain that soaked to the bone and dawns that felt carved out of silence. He never spoke. He never smiled. Duty was his language. Beneath the crisp surface of discipline, though, lay memories that still burned. A roadside explosion in a faraway desert. The screams of brothers who never made it home. And the scar on his left forearm that pulsed every time he gripped the rifle. Around him, the first tourists gathered, a father holding his daughter's hand, whispering words about courage. An old veteran with a faded cap standing ramrod straight, eyes wet. A group of high schoolers, usually noisy, subdued now, drawn into the rhythm of the Sentinel's march. The sound of his boots filled the air, steady and hypnotic. The world seemed to hold its breath in respect. Then came the sound that didn't belong, the growl of engines. Low at first, then louder, cutting through the stillness like an insult. 3 black SUVs rolled across the gravel road, tires crunching over the path that led to the restricted plaza. The tourists looked up in confusion. Even the birds seemed to quiet. From the lead vehicle stepped Lieutenant Mike Brennan, tall, broad-shouldered, his tactical vest glinting with badges and straps, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the morning light like twin shields of arrogance. He moved with the swagger of a man too used to being obeyed. Behind him followed 4 SWAT officers, all armed, all out of place in this sacred stillness. The park ranger moved first, voice polite but firm. "Sir, this area is restricted. No unauthorized personnel beyond this point." Brennan flashed a badge with a smirk. "Lieutenant Mike Brennan, Tactical Response Unit. We've got clearance, Joint Ops training." "Just observing." He didn't wait for approval. His boots hit the marble, loud, careless, echoing where only reverence should walk. The tourists murmured. Cameras hesitated mid-air. Brennan looked at the Sentinel, at Danny, and chuckled. "Man, look at this guy. Like a wind-up toy, huh?" His team snickered. Only one officer, Jenna Torres, young and uneasy, glanced at the ranger as if to apologize with her eyes. Danny didn't move. The rifle stayed poised. His eyes remained fixed forward. 21 steps. Pause. Turn. 21 back. Brennan circled closer, his smirk widening. "You really not gonna look at me? You just stand there pretending you're a statue?" His voice dripped with mockery, slicing through the reverent quiet. The crowd stiffened. The father pulled his daughter closer. The Sentinel's silence was unbroken. Not by pride, but by purpose. This was not his stage, not his argument. This was sacred ground. His breath came even, steady. Another turn. Another step. Click, click, dot, and though the air was calm, something electric had entered the plaza, the first tremor of disrespect colliding with centuries of honor. The storm hadn't started yet, but every heartbeat in that crowd could feel it coming. The marble plaza had fallen completely silent. The Sentinel's boots clicked in perfect rhythm, each sound a measured defiance against the growing arrogance that polluted the air. The tourists had drawn back instinctively, sensing the tension as Lieutenant Brennan stepped closer, his smirk turning sharper. "Come on, soldier," Brennan said, circling like a wolf testing a boundary. "You think you're better than the rest of us? You just walk in circles all day?" Danny didn't answer. He couldn't. The tomb guards were forbidden to speak while on duty, even when insulted, even when provoked. His orders were to honor the unknown, not to defend his ego. But the silence only seemed to feed Brennan's ego further. One of the SWAT officers, Torres, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, maybe we should." Brennan cut her off with a raised hand. "Relax, I'm just seeing if he's even human." He stepped forward again, so close that Danny could see his reflection in the mirrored lenses. The man's face distorted in the curve of the glass, a symbol of everything wrong with the world. Outside this sacred place, the tourists murmured now, anxious. The ranger moved toward the scene, voice trembling. "Lieutenant, please. You are on hallowed ground." But Brennan only grinned wider. "Then maybe the gods will forgive me." He reached out and tapped the barrel of the Sentinel's M14 with a finger. The soft clink echoed like a gunshot. Danny's jaw tightened, but he did not move. Every muscle in his body screamed restraint. The marble beneath his boots might as well have been the edge of a cliff. "Still nothing?" Brennan mocked. "Not even a blink? What are you, a mannequin?" Torres looked around, eyes wide. "Sir, enough. This is..." Brennan drew his taser. The metallic snap of the device coming to life split the silence. The yellow cartridge glowed faintly in the morning light. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. A mother covered her child's eyes. The ranger shouted, "Don't you dare!" But the sound came, "CRKK." A blinding flash, followed by the whip-like snap of electric wire. The probes struck the Sentinel's chest. His body convulsed once, sharply, the rifle falling from his grip as voltage tore through his muscles. For a moment, time fractured. The marble plaza, the endless white stones, the rising sun, all seemed to hold their breath. Then Danny fell to one knee. Not out of surrender, but shock. His breath came ragged, teeth clenched, eyes blazing with disbelief. The silence shattered into chaos. Tourists screamed. The ranger ran forward. Torres grabbed Brennan's arm, shouting, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Brennan laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that seemed to echo forever. Guess he was human after all. But even through the pain, Danny rose, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. His gloved hand closed around the rifle once more. The electricity had scorched his uniform, left faint wisps of smoke curling from his chest, but his gaze was still cold steel. He did not break dot, and for the first time, Brennan's smirk faltered. Because in those gray-blue eyes, he saw something ancient. Not anger, not revenge, but a silent vow stronger than any weapon. The world seemed to spin in stunned disbelief. The crowd at Arlington had gone from reverent awe to chaos in seconds. Phones were raised, capturing every angle. Every frame, the Sentinel kneeling, the commander holding a taser. The shock on faces that would soon flood every newsfeed in America. Torres knelt beside Danny, trembling. "Sir, I mean soldier, can you hear me?" Danny's breathing was ragged but controlled. He stood again before anyone could stop him. His gloved hand adjusted his uniform coat, brushing away the smoke and dust as if nothing had happened. The ritual resumed, one measured turn, one step, then another. The rifle returned to his shoulder. The rhythm of duty reclaimed its place over chaos. It was as if the marble itself demanded order. Brennan, still standing with the taser in hand, tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "He's fine. Just training accident." But nobody believed him. Within minutes, security forces poured in, MPs, cemetery rangers, a few men in unmarked uniforms. The crowd was ushered away, though dozens stayed behind, recording until the last moment. The air carried the scent of ozone and burned fabric, heavy with disbelief. Torres was pale. "Sir, you've gone too far," she whispered. Brennan snapped. "Quiet, officer. I'll handle the paperwork." Yet even he could feel it, the weight of eyes on him, the cold judgment of history itself pressing down on his chest. An unmarked black car screeched to a halt near the plaza. From it stepped General William Hayes, 4 stars gleaming faintly in the light. The murmurs stopped instantly. He was a legend, the kind of soldier whose presence silenced entire rooms. Hayes approached slowly, boots echoing against marble. His eyes swept the scene, the burnt marks on the ground, the Sentinel still marching as if nothing had happened, and Brennan frozen in place. "What happened here?" The general's voice was calm, but each word carried iron beneath it. Brennan stammered. "Sir, it was an incident during coordination. Miscommunication." Hayes didn't blink. "You discharged a weapon against a sentinel of the tomb. You interfered with a sacred post that has never, in the history of this nation, been violated. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Silence. The only sound was the sentinel's steps, click, 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 like a ticking clock counting down the seconds to judgment. "Sir, Brennan tried again, but Hayes turned to Torres. "You were witness?" "Yes, sir," she said firmly. "It wasn't an accident." Hayes's expression hardened. "Then, Lieutenant Brennan, you are relieved of duty. Surrender your weapon and badge." The air froze. Even the wind seemed to stop as Brennan hesitated, then unclipped his gun belt and handed it over. His arrogance cracked, replaced by fear. Hayes turned toward Danny, who stood motionless under the faint morning light, the faint scorch still marking his chest. The general saluted him, slow and deliberate. "Carry on." "Soldier," Hayes said. Danny nodded once and resumed his march. The plaza, once chaotic, now felt heavier than ever, not with noise, but with the silence of respect restored through pain. And somewhere in the distance, the first news choppers began circling overhead. By noon, the footage had already gone viral. Every network, every feed, every phone screen carried the same shocking clip. A sacred soldier struck down, only to rise again in silence. The title banner screamed, "Taser fired at Tomb Sentinel. Shock at Arlington." Inside the Pentagon, conference rooms buzzed like hives. Screens replayed the event from different angles. Tourists' videos, news drones, even surveillance feeds. Each replay brought fresh disbelief. Who authorized the SWAT presence? Barked a colonel, slamming a fist against the table. No one answered. General Hayes stood at the head of the room, eyes fixed on the looping video. Danny rising again, scorched uniform smoking, yet marching with perfect precision. The silence in the room thickened. Hayes finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. "That man understands something half of this country has forgotten: respect." Across town, Brennan sat in a small holding room. His mirrored sunglasses were gone. The arrogance had drained from his face. The same video played on a small monitor before him. Each time he saw the Sentinel rise, his stomach tightened. He muttered, "It wasn't supposed to go that far." But deep down, he knew it had. Meanwhile, Torres sat in an interview with a journalist from CNN. Her hands trembled slightly, but her words were firm. It wasn't an accident. He fired that taser because he couldn't handle being ignored. The Sentinel. He didn't even speak. He just stood his ground. The clip of her interview would later become one of the most shared moments of the week. At Arlington, the plaza had been closed to the public. Barricades stood between the marble steps and the tomb, but behind them, Danny still marched. Every hour on the hour. His chest bore faint burn marks, but he had refused medical leave. When asked why, his only response had been written on a form: "Because the unknowns never rest." That simple sentence spread like wildfire. Hashtags erupted. Hashtag silent honor. Hashtag the Sentinel. Hashtag respect the guard. Veterans groups gathered nationwide. Candles lined cemetery gates from Virginia to California. General Hayes watched the coverage quietly that night, his jaw set. They needed a reminder, he said to his aide. And he gave them one. But for Danny, the fame meant nothing. In his barracks, he sat alone, polishing his rifle, the same weapon scorched by the taser. His fingers trembled only once, when he noticed the tiny blackened spot on the wooden stock. Then, he wiped it clean and placed it back with reverence. Outside, the American flag rippled against the crimson sunset. The wind carried faint whispers from the rows of white headstones, as if the unknown soldiers themselves were standing guard beside him. 3 days after the Arlington incident, the Tomb Guard barracks were no longer quiet. Journalists crowded the perimeter, soldiers came and went with clipped conversations, and investigators in dark suits prowled the hallways like wolves. Danny sat at a steel table under fluorescent light. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. Across from him sat Colonel Peterson from the Army's Inspector General office, a man known for precision and suspicion in equal measure. "Sergeant Carter," Peterson began, flipping through a thick folder, "we understand you've become quite the symbol lately." Danny's tone was flat. "Sir, I'm a soldier doing my duty." Peterson leaned back. "That's exactly what makes this complicated. Your refusal to take medical leave, your continued presence on post, your viral fame, it's raising eyebrows at the top." Danny said nothing. Silence was safer. The colonel closed the folder. "You're not under investigation. The SWAT officer Brennan is. But you need to understand something. This isn't just about him anymore. Public sentiment is unpredictable. One wrong word from you could embarrass the entire Army." Danny finally looked up, eyes steady. "Then maybe the Army should remember what it's supposed to stand for." The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Outside, General Hayes watched from the corridor through the observation window. He didn't interrupt, but pride flickered in his expression. When the interview ended, he followed Danny outside into the open courtyard. The sun was bright, the sky impossibly blue. Hayes spoke first. "You handled yourself well in there." Danny nodded. "Just telling the truth, sir." "The truth," Hayes murmured, "is rarely convenient." He paused, then added, "Brennan's hearing is tomorrow. They'll make an example out of him. But the world doesn't see nuance, Sergeant. They see heroes and villains, nothing in between. Be careful which one they decide you are." That night, Danny returned to his post. The cemetery was empty, save for the whisper of wind and the soft rustle of flags. Under the moonlight, the marble tomb glowed. Faintly, an eternal promise carved in stone. Began his march once more. 20-1 steps. Pause. Turn. 21. Steps, each click of his heel echoed like a heartbeat. Through the silence of thousands, who could no longer speak for themselves. In the distance, a camera lens glinted in the dark. Someone was still watching. The hearing room inside Fort Myer was packed, soldiers in full dress, officers, reporters, even a few politicians. Cameras weren't allowed, but everyone knew the world was watching anyway. At the center sat Sergeant Danny Carter, the tomb guard who had refused to fall even when lightning struck, both literal and political. Opposite him was Officer Michael Brennan, the SWAT team member whose taser had sparked one of the most viral military incidents in modern memory. The air inside was tight, heavy with unspoken tension. Colonel Peterson stood at the front, his voice echoing through the room. "We are not here to make a spectacle. We are here to establish the facts." But everyone knew this was a spectacle. Danny watched as Brennan took the stand. The officer's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his microphone. His jaw was clenched, his uniform wrinkled from nights without sleep. Officer Brennan, Peterson began. Did you knowingly use excessive force on a ceremonial guard during an active public detail? Brennan hesitated. Sir, I believed there was a threat. The crowd was shouting, a drone flew overhead, and answer the question. Brennan swallowed. Yes, sir. I used a taser. The murmur spread across the room like a wave. Danny sat still. His gaze didn't shift. Peterson turned. Sergeant Carter, please rise. Danny stood posture perfect. His voice was even. Sir, describe what you remember. Danny took a breath. The rain was heavy. My uniform was soaked. I heard shouting but did not break formation. Then I felt the impact. It wasn't pain, more like a jolt that ripped through me. But my orders were clear, remain standing no matter what. So I did. Peterson studied him. Why didn't you move, Sergeant? Danny's reply was immediate. Because the fallen deserve someone who won't. A long silence followed. Even Brennan lowered his gaze. Later, during recess, General Hayes found Danny outside near the granite wall, engraved with names. You did well, the general said. But remember, they don't just judge truth. They judge optics. Danny's jaw tightened. Then maybe we're in the wrong business, sir. That evening, the board convened. The decision was swift. Brennan would be discharged for misconduct, stripped of badge and rank. But the statement released to the press was diplomatic. An unfortunate misunderstanding between divisions. The internet exploded anyway. Half the country hailed Danny as a living symbol of discipline and sacrifice. The other half called him a tool of military propaganda. But Danny didn't care. That night, while social media burned, he stood alone once more before the tomb. His boots clicking in perfect cadence. Each step whispered the same vow that had carried him through storms. War and electric pain, I will not falter. By the morning after the trial, Arlington National Cemetery was no longer just a place of solemnity. Headlines blared across the country. Tomb Sentinel unshaken, hero or propaganda. SWAT officer fired after viral standoff at Arlington. Social media exploded. Opinions flew like shrapnel. Some praised Danny Carter as the embodiment of honor and courage. Others called him a pawn in the military spectacle, a tool for optics over reality. Danny did not check his phone. He did not read the articles. He knew the world would form its judgments, but he was here for the unknowns. Not the applause or criticism. At Arlington, the plaza remained open, but with tighter security. Barricades reinforced, cameras rolling, military police quietly patrolling. Tourists still came, but now with eyes wide, whispers passing like wind through autumn leaves. Danny began his march as usual. 21 steps. Pause, turn, 21 steps back. Every motion precise. Every click of his heel echoed defiance against chaos. Nearby, reporters tried to sneak close, cameras hidden under coats. They were met by stony-faced MPs. From a distance, General Hayes observed the scene, arms crossed, face unreadable. He knew the army would be tested by public opinion, not just by misconduct. And he knew Danny would bear the weight of it. Inside a press room, journalists debated fiercely. He's a hero, shouted one. No, he's a symbol they're exploiting, countered another. The sound of disagreement grew louder, spilling onto television feeds. Meanwhile, the veterans groups began organizing memorials nationwide. Candles lit at gates, small ceremonies held in parks, hashtags trending globally. Even high school students began writing letters of gratitude to the Pentagon, inspired by a man who stood still against electricity, ridicule, and scrutiny. Danny's roommate, a fellow guard, finally broke the silence. You know, the world's watching you. They'll never understand it the way you do. Danny's gaze didn't waver from the marble tomb. They don't need to. I'm not here for them. By evening, the plaza was empty. The sunset cast long shadows over white marble. The flag rippled gently in the breeze. Danny's boots clicked across stone, a lone heartbeat in a city that never truly sleeps. Somewhere in Washington, political aides were drafting talking points. Military strategists were assessing public sentiment, and journalists were preparing headlines for the next cycle. But at Arlington, one man kept his vigil, silent and unyielding, a living monument to courage. As night fell, Danny paused at the tomb, looking skyward. The wind whispered through the rows of headstones. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the silent approval of countless unknown soldiers. He exhaled. No matter the storm outside, the march continued. Chapter 8. The legacy remains. The morning air at Arlington was crisp, carrying a faint mist that clung to the marble rows. News of the trial and its aftermath had spread across the nation, yet the plaza remained unchanged, solemn, silent, sacred. Danny Carter stepped onto the march path, fresh uniform pressed to perfection. His boots clicked in measured cadence. 21 steps, pause, turn, 21 steps back. Each motion precise, ritualistic, eternal. The crowd today was smaller, mostly veterans, a few families, and tourists who had heard whispers of the incident. Their eyes watched, not expecting drama, only respect. General Hayes stood nearby, observing. Though his face was stoic, a small nod acknowledged the perseverance of the man before him. A little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why doesn't he ever stop?" Her mother knelt, voice gentle. "Because he's guarding something bigger than himself, sweetheart. The people who can't guard themselves anymore." Danny's eyes never shifted from his invisible point, but somewhere deep inside, he felt the weight of generations of soldiers whose names were lost to time. Every step was for them. Every pause a silent vow. By noon, reporters had left, and the plaza quieted. Flags rippled gently in the breeze. Veterans exchanged respectful glances. High school students who had once watched with awe now understood something deeper about discipline, courage, and silence. At the changeover, Maria Lopez, the new Sentinel sergeant, emerged. She saluted Danny, who gave a brief nod before moving behind a privacy screen to be checked by the medic. He refused help, moving with a subtle limp but unyielding spirit. General Hayes addressed the gathered crowd, voice carrying across the plaza. "This place is more than marble and stone. It's a promise to remember those who gave everything and whose stories remain untold. Sergeant Carter stands for that promise." Danny returned to the march path, his movements unwavering, boots echoing against the stone like a heartbeat through time. The crowd remained silent, some clapping softly, some wiping tears, all witnesses to a quiet strength that spoke louder than words. By evening, the sun cast long shadows over Arlington. Danny paused briefly at the tomb, glancing skyward. The wind whispered through the rows of headstones. He exhaled slowly, letting the calm sink in. The legacy of honor and duty endured, not through fanfare or applause, but through steadfast commitment and courage. And as night fell, Danny continued his vigil, each step a tribute to the unknown soldiers who could not walk anymore. Each motion a reminder that true strength sometimes lies in silent perseverance.